We have now began our exploration of all the places around Mobile, Alabama. Today is one that I'm looking most forward to. I've been excited about being able to come here for quite a while now. Today, we're gonna check out the USS Alabama at Battleship Memorial Park. Very first thing you see when you turn on the road is this giant plane on top of a sign that says Battleship Memorial Park. There's a lot going on here at Battleship Park, and I'm very excited to be able to tour it all today. I want to go ahead and forewarn you, I apologize for this video being long today. This was going to be a lot longer than my normal vlogs, but I have a lot to show you, and I'm not going to be able to fit it all into a 10-minute video. So hopefully you'll stick around and watch the whole thing. There's a lot of good things to see here at Battleship Park. There's a lot more to see than just the battleship. They have airplanes, helicopters, there's even a submarine here. There's a lot to see, a lot to film. There's a lot that we'll be able to do today. For starters, first thing you see when you get out of your vehicle, you can't miss it, is this giant B-52 bomber here. And it has all these pictures of bombs. I'm not sure if that's how many bombs it's dropped in its time or what. It says this guy is a Vietnam veteran. Thank you for your service. A Huey here on display, United States Army, used in Vietnam. This is the UH-1H. Over here all by its lonesome is this US Coast Guard plane. It has the fins and tanks hanging off of it so it can float in the water. This one of the underbelly looks like the bottom of a ship. It can float in water, or the legs come down and it can land like a plane. This is the Grumman HU-16E Albatross. This is a Sikorsky Sea Guard with its propellers folded in. Here's another US Coast Guard ship. And then this is a surf boat, a foot motor surf boat. What I think is really cool though is this helicopter here from the US Coast Guard. It's a funny shape, it's like an L shaped or a boomerang. If you guys know, if you guys have been following the channel for quite a while, you will know that I am really big into space and science and rockets and those type things. As you can see it that I'm walking beside right now, this is a Mercury Redstone ICBM. This was developed by Wernher von Braun to work just like the V2 that was used in World War II. This rocket was also designed in the beginning stages of America trying to figure out how to put a man in space. America trying to put a man in space ultimately led to the design of the Mercury Redstone rocket. Well, I've never seen one like it before, but it's an area, it has a pump, so if you're on your bicycle, you can pump up your tires. It also has any tool you might need in case you need to fix something on your bicycle, and that's really cool. They have a lot of military armored vehicles right here on this pathway. It's different shells throughout time and how they've changed. You see here, this is like a cannonball, and then they started forming the typical shell shape. and they kept evolving. Look at this guy just sitting over here all by its lonesome. This thing's got some damage to it for sure. Quite a few. Look at this. So I don't know, even the glass housing where the pilot would sit is broken. A random bomb. This is a 500-pound bomb just sitting here. Jet sitting over here off to the side. Very cool. Jet engine. Sit back there and all the air would get sucked in through these vents. There's another bomb just hanging out. There's a couple more over here that's pretty rusted. We're definitely in an area right now that we're not supposed to be. We are in like a scrap area. There's a lot of scrap metal all around us. But we saw the planes, and there is a military truck sitting here that we wanted to check out. Look at this guy here. This is Oyster Bay at one point in time, but this was a military convoy truck. After visiting all the planes out here in the yard, you continue walking up to the front and you run into this magnificent structure here behind me. This is the USS Alabama. Obviously, touring the USS Alabama is a popular thing today. We are in a long line way outside, just waiting to get in to pay our admission fees to get in. And when you come through the entrance to Battleship Park, you have a giant propeller. This is one of the propellers that power the USS Alabama through the ocean. Access into the Battleship Memorial Park not only gives you access to the USS Alabama behind me right here, you also get access to an aircraft pavilion and the USS Drum. The USS Drum is the submarine. This is a Kingfisher, the OS-2U Kingfisher, sailed aboard the USS Alabama. It had a launcher off the bow, and it would just launch it and it could go right out into the water. This Kingfisher though has had some damage. It's seen better days. Here's the planes that the Tuskegee Airmen flew, the red tails. As you can see, it has its distinctive red tail, the F-16. I like how the wings fold up on that one. This is an F-18 Hornet. The President of the United States of America seal on the side of this helicopter.
Program.
Ronald Reagan himself flew aboard this helicopter. Army One. They also have a deuce and a half here. They even have it loaded up with military cargo crates. This piece of jagged steel is actually pretty interesting. This is a piece of the World Trade Towers from 9/11. All three of those name tags there are all people from Alabama who died in the September 11th terror attacks. And the brick beside them is from the Pentagon. Ceiling up there, they have a model of a V-1 rocket, a German V-1. You see the shaft on the top of it was an engine that propelled it. Germany launched a bunch of those onto London. This is an F-14 Tomcat. This version, the wings could adjust forward or backward depending on whether they had the afterburners engaged or not. All these items that you see here were all recovered from a North Vietnamese prisoner of war camp. All of them. The tree sock, 1972. Americans were given socks by the North Vietnamese prison guards for the first time, and it was on Christmas Eve. So they used those socks to make a Christmas tree. Here's another prison camp from Vietnam. They would be set right in here, and their legs would be shackled through these shackles at their ankles. They would be given a bucket to use the bathroom in, and that's it. Not cool, not cool. Oh, look at this guy. It's just a little cargo mover. It's not much to it, just wheels and an engine and pedals. They can just haul cargo around. Very, very, very cool. Here's their Nazi Germany section. These are Nazi uniforms. Here's the Allied powers section here. And here is a nurse from the aircraft carrier, the USS Forrestal. They had these little things here that would hook to the plane to drag them around on the aircraft carriers. But this is a medic vehicle from Korea. Even has a sick patient on the inside of it, complete with gurney stretchers and everything. It's really awesome that they still have all of those with it. Yesterday, if you remember, we toured the Mobile Museum of History, and I did a segment in that video about the first working submarine, the H.L. Hunley. They have a full-size recreation of it right here. There's the single propeller. Inside, right down the middle of this submarine, there was a crankshaft. 8 men sat on the inside with one pilot who stood right here at the front. 8 men sat at that crank with basically no room to move. All 8 of those men turning the crank, turn that propeller, and that's how they move throughout the ocean. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting story. These levers and paddles you see here, the pilot would use these to cause them to surface or go beneath the surface of the ocean. And then the rudder in the back would cause them to have them turn underneath. This is very cool to see here. Of course, the real H.L. Hunley was recovered from the bottom of the sea and is in South Carolina. They pulled it from the sea, they got the mud and gunk out of it, and they're slowly removing the rust from it to learn more about the soldiers who sat inside of it to turn the crank. This is a full-size recreation of the same thing. That's very interesting that it's here. And I just had a conversation with it in the comments of that video from yesterday with Craig Charlton. Oh, we board the USS Drum. I was not in the Navy, but every time I see one of these submarines, specifically when I see this upper deck here with all the holes in it and everything, I think about Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he had to board the submarine out at sea.
I found it. Where? There.
Still has its bell. We are all the way at the very front of the submarine. I'm not sure what that's for. The USS Drum that we're standing on submarine was used in World War II. Everything that we are walking on, that we are looking at with our own eyes right now, sailed under the water during World War II. And we're going down into the bowels of the USS Drum. Pittsburgh, Parker, remember that? And this is the forward torpedo bays. You see there's 4 immediately into crew rooms. These trays would fold down and that's a sink for them to use. There's an officer's 3-man stateroom here. And the captain had plenty of room. He had his own bed, his own desk with a safe to keep his valuables. These personal artifacts were found on board this submarine, on board the Drum, with a picture of the captain's wife. He had his own medicine cabinet here, and a sink, and he had his own closet. Captain Howard Walter Gilmore. It's a tight squeeze. We've reached the control room. This is where all the magic happened. This is where everything happened at, right here in this room. This told the lookout what they were doing, where they were going. Full aboard, stopped. Going aft through another hatch. Into the galley. This sailor here is cooking up some breakfast. We got bacon and sausage and eggs. Fresh fruit, tomatoes. There's Kellogg's Rice Krispies there on the top shelf. This is where they made the food for all the sailors. This was their ice cream machine here. Down below us here, this is cold storage. Their refrigerator and their freezer are both down here. So in order for the chef who would be in that window to cook, say he was cooking eggs like we saw him doing, he would have to ascend the ladder, go get the eggs, somehow get those eggs back up the ladder and into that kitchen before he could even start cooking. You see how close my shoulders are from side to side? The electrical room operators had no room to move at all. Here is the releases for all the latches to get on and off the ship. Here's their communication box. This is how they could talk with the captain or the pilot right there. We're going to enter this hatch now. And then here is, this is the rear torpedo bay. Once again, it could launch 4 torpedoes at a time. They have one here installed to show you what it would be like. Back out of the USS Drum now. In yesterday's video, I talked about the cars that were designed to drive on land or in the water. Well, we saw them driving through the town yesterday. Now, here's one out here floating in the water. We have seen the aircraft hangar, and we've seen the USS Drum submarine. The only thing left to see, the USS Alabama. We are now boarding the USS Alabama. I cannot believe the size of these deck guns. These things are massive. They have these giant 20mm anti-aircraft guns here. These drums would have been full of ammo. They would use this for aircraft to take off. Even though this isn't an aircraft carrier, this piece here in the middle, the whole thing would turn and rotate on this turntable. A ship would be up here at the top and it would be facing out to sea. And the ship we saw earlier inside of the hangar, it would sit right back here in the very back, and it had a mechanism that would launch it straight out into the ocean. The finger of suspicion points at you. One of the old timers who used to work on the USS Alabama, he told the story of one of these guns. The Japanese were flying so low that they were below radar level, flying below the radar level, so they lowered the turret down to fire at him, and he blew a hole right through the ship, right through the steel, trying to fire at the Japanese. Entrance into the giant deck gun. We're gonna go up there and see what it looks like. All right, let's see.
Whoa! This one's cool.
We are inside of the deck gun now. You can see the deck guns here. You're deep inside of this deck gun right now. The shells would come in down here, This mechanism right here would grab the shells and load it for them. The door would close, and the men who were inside, you can see the porthole where they could watch what was going on. The men that were inside of there would hit the button and fire. There's 3 seats here. 2 for directional control, up and down, left and right. 1 person who sat here who could look through this. This is the giant periscope, side to side. They would be able to look through this and give them the coordinates that they needed. They would call up to the bridge and say fire. The USS Alabama's military designation was BB-60. That's why it has the 60 on the front of the ship. It's a South Dakota class battleship. The USS Alabama was commissioned in 1942. It served in the Pacific and the Atlantic theaters. And then it was decommissioned in 1947. It's set in a shipyard. Basically, they had ships who were on standby, ready to go in case we went into another war. And it sat on standby there for several years before it was towed here to Mobile, Alabama, parked in the bay. It sat here in the Bay of Mobile for a couple of years before it was turned into a museum. Fun fact about the USS Alabama, there were 2 movies filmed using the ship as it sits right here in the Mobile Bay. Under Siege, Steven Seagal movie with Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey. Also the USS Indianapolis, Men of Courage, which had Nicolas Cage, Tom Sizemore, and Thomas Jane, the guy who played Punisher, was also in that movie. Both of which said the battleship was somewhere else, but all of the scenes where they were on the battleship were filmed right here on the USS Alabama in Mobile. We're entering into the USS Alabama. Okay. Oh my God. Talks about the movies that I just mentioned to you. USS Indianapolis with Nicolas Cage, and here is Under Siege with Steven Seagal. Here's a couple more movies that were also made here. War and Remembrance, Rapid Fire, Mission of the Shark, Unsolved Mysteries. Night filming of the movie Under Siege, USS Alabama, or BB-60, was renumbered to 63 to portray the USS Missouri. Oh, here's a crew quarter. Here's another crew quarter. Hey, how you doing? Look at this huge chain hoist, and there's this open passageway down here. Obviously, oh look, it goes all the way down to the bottom. They could open up all these grates and send this hoist all the way to the bottom of the ship. Come out on this side of the bay now. We are over here amidst all the on this side of the ship. This is not to be confused with the radar room. This is what they called the plotting room. They had maps on these round tables that would plot out courses or plans of attack for upcoming missions. Captain's offices on the bridge. We're up like 5 levels now, and the wind is pretty serious up here right now. Looks like it's gonna rain over here shortly. Oh. Leading down into the ship. maintenance rooms where they keep wrenches and spare parts. Here's a lathe for them to cut metal, tool chest, wrenches. This is the engineer's office. Here's the blacksmith shop on board. I guess this is the pharmacy.
See, I imagine that'd be hard to work with things. Those big giant poles.
Fire damage control is what this is. There's a basket in case somebody gets injured. Fire extinguishers, access generators. Here's the ship's chapel, in case you were religious. This is an equipment locker, which carry a gas mask. This room holds the 20mm clips for the guns outside. Here's their post office. Books, stamps, everything. Packages. If they wanted to send a letter out, they would come drop it in this slot. The supply store, when all of the Marines would come in here to get their supplies. Communications room. That's where they did all their communication with the outside world. This is the ear, nose, and throat clinic room in there. Looks like we are at the sick bay now. The general doctor's office. This is the medical clerical office here. The bacteriological office. This is the dispensary. This is the pharmacy. This is their surgery room. Very cool. It doesn't look very sterile. Here is the operating room. Still doesn't look very sterile in there. But if you got hurt in battle, you came here to get fixed, and you had to trust they knew that it was sterile and they knew what they were doing. And here's sick bay beds. If you were sick and you had surgery or something, you would come stay in one of these. So this is the isolation ward. The danger of infectious disease spreading through a crowded ship was pretty high. So they made every effort they could to isolate those kind of cases. Wow, this is cool. This is the dentist's office. Here's their dental chairs and their needles and picks, and there's another one. They had 2 chairs. And the dentist office. X-ray dark room. This is where they would develop the x-rays if you were sick and had to have them. Here's missile storage. It's where they store all their missiles. It looks like this was on a giant turntable. Looks like this whole thing spun. And they could release and spin missiles as they needed. In this room, this is where they had all the powder shells, and this is where the conveyor belts were. These things here, these shafts, they would load in the powder barrels. They would load them in, they would close the hatch, and it would suck them straight up to anywhere in the ship they needed them to go. Suspicion points at you. This is looking at a porthole window onto the Bay of Mobile. We have seen all of the innards, all of the insides of the USS Alabama. Now we're gonna walk all the way up to the bow, to the very front tip top of the ship. There's also the giant anchor chains right here on both sides of us. Look at this, it's huge. Eat it. The finger of suspicion points at you. That's it for the USS Alabama. This thing is awesome. But I'm gonna go ahead and end the video there. I want to thank you all for watching. Make sure to go down and click the thumbs up button to like this video. Make sure you click the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.
suspicion points at you.